keeping you up to date with the latest in Texas Tech sports. This is the Ask Level podcast, brought to you by Double T 97.3.
Hey, what's happening? Welcome into episode 9 of the Ask Level podcast. I'm Chois Woodman, along with the man, the myth, the legend, Chris Level. The Red Raiders making us a little bit happy this week, a lot happy, because we get to go through something that doesn't really happen in Big 12 play, at least not often, a somewhat stress-free Saturday as the Red Raiders take down West Virginia 48-10. Level, how you feeling after that one?
No, that's you're right. That's a unicorn, man. I mean, to beat somebody that bad and do it that handily, and them not be named Kansas, you know, I mean that's it's been a while, and for whatever reason, man, there's certain teams you just simply cannot beat. I don't care where the games are, who's playing quarterback, who's coaching you, and right now it just feels like West Virginia just can't figure out a way to beat you, and it doesn't hurt my feelings. I don't hate it. I think that the game versus West Virginia was one of those swing games, man, because if you talk about it from the standpoint of if both teams are 3-3, and if you head into the Baylor game and you're 3-4 and 1-3 in the league, that just to me sounds so much different and feels different, and the optics and just the mood of the fan base compared to 4-3 and 2-2 in the league. You know, with that home game coming up and against Baylor. So, but I just wasn't expecting like this kind of dominant performance. Cause I mean, I watched Neil Brown after the West Virginia game and him talk to his West Virginia media, and he was in some ways speechless and disappointed, and basically, you know, just like as frustrated as I think to quote him as anytime he's ever been a coach at any level ever. That's their worst loss. That's West Virginia's worst loss to an unranked opponent since 1965.
Really?
Yeah. No, this is
a stat for you.
Wow. Yeah, that's right. And so this is just that, but he really pointed at the offense. He just felt like he's like, we were bad. I have nothing positive to say on offense. Nobody, and I thought Tech's defense deserves a ton of credit there.
Sure,
I thought your corners wore their receivers out.
Mm-hmm. No, I thought, you know, Neil Brown and that West Virginia offense, a huge part of it is the screen game, and they never were able to get that going. Muddy Waters in particular just lived on reading those screens and blowing them up immediately. And I think that was a huge part of it is that you had them behind the chains most of the day. When you looked at their third down opportunities, it's 3rd and 7 or longer most of the time. And that's where you force them into bad decisions, able to get turnovers off of that. This may have been I don't know, you got to consider opponent and all that, but may have been your best defensive day of the year so far.
Oh, I think it's one of your best defensive days, because this is a West Virginia offense that was averaging 39 points a game. Yeah. I mean, they were running the ball handily, you know, and when we talked about that on the broadcast choice, when we heard from Neil Brown from earlier in the week, I mean, they had really run the ball all season long, right, against everybody except for Texas in Austin. But now they will also add, they have not run the ball well, you know, when they played Texas Tech in Lubbock either, because 73 yards, I think. And they just, just non-factor. And I thought that there was a few runs that I thought when they're trying to get back in the game, I'm like, okay, here we go. But it didn't ever materialize. And, you know, this just goes to show you, and this is why Joey had the Take 3 shirts made, and why so much emphasis is put on this. And this isn't necessarily why you won this game per se, but it is why how you won in a blowout. But that the turnovers, man, it's just when you don't give it to somebody and you able to get some you're on your own, boy, it just changes the dynamic. And again, it's cliche-ish. I get it. It's Captain Obvious. Everybody understands it. That's why the percentages are overwhelming in your favor when you're a +3 in a game. But your turnover margin now goes from, let's see, you had 13 giveaways coming into the game.
I think you're -7 coming in, right?
Yeah. Well, yeah, you had 6 takeaways and 13 giveaways, so that it was a -7. Now you're a -3.
It's a big difference in one game.
It is a big game. And the more that thing gets closer to 0, or heaven forbid you get on the plus side, look out.
Yeah.
But that was the defensive side choice, but I just thought that offensively, that was, you just kept your foot on the gas, and you used the 4th down conversions earlier in the game.
Sure.
To essentially not have to mess with that later in the game.
Mm-hmm.
You go, I mean, it's 6 or 7 for 4th down, and on 4th down in the first half, and then you don't even end up having to go for it at all in the second half because you had just kind of built the lead, held them at arm's length, and you weren't in a position where you needed to. You were,
and that all factors into the analytics too. If you're up by so many points, then you don't need to go for it on 4th down. So it's all a system, and it's worked very well in favor of the Red Raiders so far this year. But yeah, the offense, we can talk about both sides of the ball. And Level, you mentioned this, I think it was off the broadcast, but what game can you point to in recent history that was more complete than this one when you're facing a real opponent, a Big 12 caliber opponent?
Yeah, because you were, I mean, so we don't get it twisted here. You were favored here, but not, I don't even think you were favored by a touchdown. I think you were favored by 5.5 or 6 points is what it hovered around.
Mm-hmm.
I had seen 6.5 or 7, but I do think it had come down as far as the point spread goes. So, and I mean, what West Virginia, I mean, they just beat Baylor in a big game, nationally televised game, and they were coming off of they hung with Pitt. But yeah, it's been a long time because there's really there's just not much that you can look at in any way and say, well, but this wasn't good. Well, okay, but we should have been better there. No, that's what I'm saying. It's kind of a unicorn.
Yeah.
It's tricky because for coaches now, because they almost go, okay, what do we harp on them about? And they'll find some stuff. I mean, there'll be some things that they didn't do particularly well that we just, but I just was very impressed because I thought your defense was on point. I thought offensively you ran the ball extremely well, which had been a problem to this point in the season. I mean, you run it for what, 240?
239 in the game.
Yeah, I mean 240, and it didn't matter who. I mean, it was Roderick. That's the fastest I've thought Taj Brooks has looked.
I mean, he exploded through some holes.
Yeah, and then Bryson Donnell was like, he's still carrying Mountaineers somewhere. That was just, and that was all him. So I don't know. It was that you went to the stadium before that game, and you're just kind of like, well, it's a bit nervous here. This is, if it doesn't go well, this may be a tough, end of the season. But if it does go well, okay, now you get a sold out crowd staring you in the face and an opponent that there's some storylines there with Coach McGuire and having coached at Baylor and knowing their personnel extremely well, and some other coaches on his staff that were there as well. So it just sets up for, that's what this stuff is supposed to be, man. It's supposed to be fun. But here we go, man. Sign me up.
I think one of the interesting things is we get nervous as Texas Tech fans and all college football fans to an extent. We get nervous going into a game like we saw on Saturday against West Virginia. But it's still very young in the Joey McGuire era, but you haven't really had any sort of letdown game or big disappointment game. Your three losses have come on the road to ranked opponents. They've taken care of business in these games that you're supposed to win. And you haven't had a lot of them because you've faced a lot of tough competition, but I don't think they could have delivered any more than they did on Saturday against West Virginia.
Yeah, I know that it's not, proper to mention his name anymore, but I really don't care. I mean, I thought he did a really good job here, but that's when I knew that Chris Beard had Tech basketball turn around, is when they initially in his tenure as the head coach, they were competitive every time. There was never the let up. And I thought, okay, I mean, it didn't matter if it was non-conference or conference or whatever. They just didn't really ever show you signs of like a no-show. And I think, to Joey's credit, I think that they have not had any of that as well. And heaven forbid, what if they just continue to get better as the season goes along? Okay. And because we haven't seen that around here in a long, long time, where a team is just kind of steadily. I mean, we're used to watching the Kansas States of the world and some programs like that just kind of steadily get better as the season goes on. Iowa State has done this, and you're like, "Whoo, glad I'm not having to play those guys right now." But heaven forbid you're one of those teams. It'd be kind of fun. And I do want to talk about the quarterback situation too, because Choice, I mean, I think late in the week, they weren't even sure who was going to start. Behren couldn't move very well at all. He's got an issue, I think, with both ankles-ish.
Yeah.
And he couldn't move around very well at all. And they were almost to the point where they were just going to say, man, if he can't protect himself, if he can't do some of the things that we need him to do, we may have to turn to Donovan. Not that they would have felt bad about turning to Donovan. They were just like, I think Behren had earned the right to kind of play, and they wanted to give him that chance, but also not going to put him out there if he's compromised. And I don't mind saying it. And I'm sure people will, if they kind of hinted at any sort of negativity last week from anybody, when you kind of have a vague idea of what these situations are, I was shocked seeing how well he moved around. I even talked to people on the sideline going, wasn't expecting to see this. And they'd been around him all week. I mean, and so it's kind of gamerish, it's kind of adrenaline-ish, but if you wouldn't have known anything, you wouldn't have.
There's no hitch in the giddy up at all. I mean, if you were far away from the situation, just kind of watching the game as a casual observer, you would think, hey, this kid looks good. I mean, he looks fresh. He looks like he's ready to go. But you would have no idea that there, if stuff hadn't come out that his ankle still bother him or whatever. Yeah.
And here's what I wonder. I just wonder how much of like that was knowing, hey man, if I don't play and play well, I'm losing this thing. Yeah. I'm like my job or the opportunity to play. I've got not one but two guys staring down the barrel that are ready to replace me. And so that's going to be really interesting as at some point here pretty quick, and maybe it's next weekend when the Bears are in town, when all three options are going to be available. And you will see all three on the field at the same time. I'm telling you right now, that's what you will see, maybe even early in the game. Okay, so be prepared for that. Joey's talked about this in public settings. He's talked about it, mentioned it to the media after the West Virginia game. I mean, when they're healthy, guess what? And I don't know who comes off the field, because if those three guys are out there, you got five offensive linemen. Yeah, you just have three other guys. I don't know what they're doing. I don't know who, but they've. So my point is, though, is I wonder if Behren just was like, man, I'm going to gut this out. But, and maybe it wasn't as hurt as we would have thought. I don't know. But then you find out he's sick.
Right.
They have to give him an IV and all that. And so, but anyway.
Yeah. It's crazy story. Fortunately, there was no story to yesterday's game, just as smooth as it could have gone. And one more person I want to highlight, Level, that has quietly taken the lead as your leading receiver this year. I say quietly, he had a big game yesterday, but he has been about as steady as you've had at the receiver position, especially with the absence of Miles Price. But Xavier White has been really good for you. 409 yards on the season. Yesterday, ended up with 139 yards. Of course, that long touchdown catch. White we were kind of talking before the season, who's going to step up and be that next receiver after Price? And unfortunately, it's been in some of Price's absence, but White has kind of been that guy.
Been very steady. He's just really good at footballing, man. This is a former running back. This is he's a returner. He's got a Swiss Army knife component to him, and that he just can do a little bit of everything. But him and Nehemiah Martinez, those two guys, they're kind of the same. Local products. They work extremely hard. They're very versatile. And Xavier's a little bit older than Nehemiah, or a little bit older, and been in the program a few more years. But it's just fun to kind of watch those guys kind of, I don't know, realize their dreams and start to be consistent, because their team desperately needs them. I mean, their team absolutely needs them. And you're right. Xavier's just kind of started to be this step, because he's fast, but he's not like blazing fast.
Yeah.
But he's just got a good knack. And like the one he takes to the house against West Virginia, when he just kind of makes a kind of a cut and he just has the right angle. He just understands leverage and angles and all those things. He just got some good instincts to him. But I'm big fan of him. And that's what you need, man. That's what you need is you just are begging for consistency on offense from some of these skill guys, because like, Trey Cleveland had some big days. He doesn't really have as much. And, the tight ends have been kind of hit and miss. The running backs have been kind of, okay, which one is it? Are we going to have either one? And so there's something to be said about just consistency, man, because that's the hardest thing to achieve in sports.
Absolutely. So let's turn the page, look towards the Baylor Bears. You mentioned it a little bit ago, but this is obviously a very interesting matchup because this is the previous location for Joey McGuire. How does that play in, if at all? I mean, obviously he's very familiar with personnel. Is that where it's most, he's like where it plays in the most? He just knows the personnel the best, or does he have an advantage with scheme there? Did they have any sort of advantages of knowing him? Like what all goes into that?
Yeah, I think the I don't know how much of an advantage it is, but Joey will know a lot of their personnel and just personalities and what some certain kid. But what do you do with that?
Yeah, exactly.
That's the thing. What exactly do you do?
Because you have to translate that to your team in a week,
right? And I will tell you, this is much different than like. Okay, we'll go back to that same reference. This is much different than like Chris Beard, Mark Adams type stuff.
Yeah,
Joey left, and everybody in Waco has nothing but good things to say about Joey McGuire. I mean, one of their radio guys reaches out to me all the time. Is like, hey man, tell Coach McGuire we said hello. We miss him. I mean, it was nothing but positive vibes and all that. And I think it was just an opportunity for a new opportunity and a better opportunity for Joey and his family. Yeah. So there's no animosity. I mean, obviously your head strength coach is going to know the personalities there. You've got some other pieces that were on those sidelines or in that program as well that came with Coach McGuire, Coach Blanchard, who does a lot of the recruiting. Right. But and everybody's going to say the right things this week, leading up to this game. Everybody's going to take the high road. There's no animosity there, so that's why it's different. It doesn't hurt though to know the personnel. It doesn't hurt to know most of it. You won't know every piece. You may know tendencies, but I'm gonna tell you, Coach Aranda, he reads that golden analytics book too, wherever he has it, because they go for it as many times on fourth down as the Red Raiders do, and so that thing's supposed to start at 6:30 next Saturday night, but we may be there till 10:30 or 11 o'clock because he went for it on I think a 4th and 1 on his own 15-yard line at home versus Oklahoma State a few weeks ago. Did Coach Aranda? I mean, they don't. There was a 4th down. They went for 4th and short on their own end of the field, and I think that ended up being a 65-yard touchdown pass too against Oklahoma State. But again, they were behind, trying to catch up and being aggressive. But you better pack a lunch if you're on defense, because you're gonna have to stop these teams or pack a dinner. I should say, based on the kick time, if you're going to try to stop these teams, because they're going to go for it on 4th downs a lot, both offenses will. And you should be healthiest on offense that you've been really since the season started. Yeah,
which will be fantastic.
Yeah, well, it's just needed. I mean, and it allows you to run 100-something plays and like be better at it. But I'm ready to see Miles Price back. Miles Price hasn't played with Behren Morton, man.
That's crazy. That's crazy to think about.
Think about it. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's an underutilized phrase, by the way. Pack a lunch. That needs to come back in a strong way. I love that one.
It's like the line in what was that? The Mel Gibson movie when he's like, "Where are you going? I'm going to pack a fight." Don't you remember? And he's always got the makeup on and everything. Yeah.
It's Braveheart.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, so, but he's riding around on that horse. Where are you going? Going to pack a fight.
Yeah, that's right. Fantastic. Hopefully the Red Raiders do that this weekend. So,
yes,
the Bears of Baylor. This is a team it's kind of hard to figure out. Preseason picked to win the league. I don't remember if it was by coaches or media, but picked to win the league prior to the season. They've also obviously had somewhat of an underwhelming based off of those preseason expectations. Their season's been a little underwhelming. Still a lot of talent there, but kind of hard to figure out after giving up the 40 points to West Virginia against Kansas on Saturday, jump out to a huge lead and then let it dwindle away, end up stretching out to win at 35-23. So what are the expectations from that team for you?
Well, I think some of the expectations for Baylor were just unrealistic based on how much talent they lost because they were loaded last year. Go look at the NFL draft from last year. And I think you make the quarterback change. Gary Bohannon exits in the spring and Blake Shapen kind of steps in. And the Red Raiders saw this quarterback, obviously, in Waco last year. And he was somebody that played really good in that game, I think, and then in the Big 12 championship game as well. But they just, I think where the strengths are with Baylor are supposed to be, and that's where the rub is they're really good up front on both sides, but I don't know if it's been as good as what everybody thought.
Sure.
Because of West Virginia running for 200 something yards on them and going right at that Baylor defensive line. And so I think Baylor is good. Mm-hmm. They're not as good as everybody thought. And I think the expectations were just unrealistic on just because it really is a credit to what they were last year. They were so good last year and they won a bunch of one-score games. The Texas Tech one, prime example. I mean, they were fortunate enough to hold on there and the Red Raiders, missed that field goal to try to tie it at the end of the game. But I just think, but this is a game you can win if you're Texas Tech. I mean, they just have a lot of good big people. They missed Tyquan Thornton. I think it wide out. He was a difference maker. Now he's playing, I believe, for the Patriots. So I just, they missed. They had the unbelievable running back situation with their wide out, and then they just didn't really turn it over, and they won a bunch of one-score games. They lost a bunch of guys in the secondary and on defense. So, but this is just going to be a solid football team. You'll need to play really, really well. And guess what? If you just don't turn the ball over and you can create some takeaways, you might like the result. But again, easier said than done.
Yeah, a lot easier said than done. It's just this goes to show the league again. I mean, showing what Baylor has done this year, but just looking around the league, seeing what happened in the K-State TCU game again on Saturday night. It's just crazy to see the parity in this league. You've done this a lot longer than me. Have you ever seen a year that's been quite like this?
No, it's never been as deep. I think everybody around the country is starting to understand. And like, I would just say this, you mentioned the TCU Kansas State game. Why can the Kansas State kicker decide not to make field goals? and every time that the Red Raiders are on the field, they don't ever miss a field goal. They don't ever screw up anything. I also think it's fascinating, too, talking about one of the other games, Oklahoma State and Texas game. Mm-hmm. Have you ever seen a team never commit a penalty in a game?
I don't think I've ever seen that, but maybe we're getting some overcompensation finally from the officials for the way it's always been the other direction. It's like, hey, these guys are leaving the league. We're finally getting the memo here. I don't know. No,
14 penalties to none. I think that's amazing. That's and there's just no way that's reality either. I mean, I'm sorry. The game,
it's not. But
the game doesn't work like that. There's just no way that one team. It drives me crazy when Kansas State. It's like they just
get the benefit of the doubt.
Yeah, they live off this reputation like that. We wouldn't. Coach Snyder would never.
And it felt like it went against the Red Raiders for the longest time too. You had a reputation in the other direction
because Mike Leach and Sonny Dykes and people like that were really mean to the officials all the time.
Yeah, you had that other reputation, and you didn't get the benefit on those calls.
Like cussing them. Yeah, like I'm. This is a PG podcast here, Woodman. So I don't want to. Yeah, PG. But no, it's funny. But that's why the result between Texas Tech and West Virginia is such a unique setup, because I guarantee you there was people around the league that saw that score and went, "Whoa," because those kinds of results haven't really happened.
Sure.
Yeah. Oklahoma's been blown out a few times. Texas obviously blew them out. I think TCU blew them out. But there's a lot of teams that are same as, and the Vegas agrees and all that. And that's why, you get a lopsided result, and people are still trying to figure out who Texas Tech is.
Yeah.
You know, do they belong in the top half, the bottom half? You know, who are they? Are they a fraud? Are they a contender? Are they a bowl team? Are they year one in a rebuild? I mean, you have no idea what you are, but I guarantee I know what people are saying now, and it's the better parts of those two categories, and not the latter.
Yeah. What would you answer if someone asked you to answer that question? What is Texas Tech in 2022?
Texas Tech is a bowl team that I think can make some noise in this league. Texas Tech is a team that is going to help decide who the league champion is. I don't know if you're going to be the team that is good enough and consistent enough, because here's what I need to see next.
Yeah.
Until you can go win a game on the road, you're not going to go. You're not going to be a conference championship game contender. You're just not. Sure. And right now, you haven't done that yet. But what you have done is you've won 4 games at home, and you have 3 left at home. And if you do that and do that alone, you're going to at the very least go 7-5. Okay,
Absolutely.
So because you've got 7 home games, and if you're telling me right now that you could beat Baylor and Kansas and Oklahoma, and that was it, I'd take it. I'd take it in year one, considering all the injuries and the quarterback shenanigans that have gone on around here with not being able to keep a guy healthy. But that's where, you know, and TCU went up to Kansas in front of game day, and they won a tough game. You know, they're going to have to go to West Virginia this week. I mean, Oklahoma State, you know, they went to Baylor and won a game, and that's what puts them in a position to play a tough, you know, in Kansas State, they went to Fort Worth and couldn't get it done. Yeah. And I don't feel sorry for them that they couldn't make a kick or they couldn't keep a quarterback healthy. Welcome to the party, Chris Kleiman. Welcome to the party, man. It's you got a double fist at this party, man, because the injured quarterback, you know, party is not as much fun, is it?
Yeah, it's not fun, and not every team is 3 quarterbacks deep.
They Kansas State sure is not.
No,
I thought it was comical.
We definitely discovered that.
Yeah, it was comical to me that they were talking about how he's the best backup quarterback. Talking about Will Howard. Yeah. He runs, you know, scores some touchdowns initially, and I'm like, this guy couldn't hold. He's nowhere near what you've got in Lubbock, Texas. And they throw the third guy in. He throws a pick on his first attempt.
Right.
I'm like, yeah. That quarterback room, yeah, good luck.
Yeah, not quite. Speaking of quarterback room, let's dive into a few questions that we've got from the audience. First one is from John. What does Behrens' play mean for Donovan Smith?
Well, it to this point, it means that Donovan Smith will continue to be on the sideline. I mean, that's what it means. But it also means that, I mean,
I don't know if they're asking that more of a future question.
Well, yeah, and I'll answer that, because I think this is what people, I think that they want, although there's going to be a consequence that comes with it. So as long as everybody understands that,
right?
The reality is this: if Behren Morton continues to play quarterback here at Texas Tech and play well, and he may do that, he may finish it out, and you're going to feel great about him going forward and all that. If he continues to play and play well, you're going to have multiple quarterbacks enter the portal, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So like Donovan and Tyler Shuck will likely leave. Okay. And then guess what? You will have to go back into the portal to try to find somebody to add into your depth chart, because you'll have Behren Morton and then your freshman Jake Strong. But that's the reality of it. So
sure.
You know, anyway, there you go.
No, and it's the world of college football and college athletics in general. But I think everybody takes a great QB1 if that's your option. Derek asks the question, was this performance more of Tech taking the next step forward, West Virginia not being able to travel well, or just because you play well off of a bye week?
I think
he did say specific more towards the offensive line improving too.
Yeah, there was more of a combination of everything right there. I think Neil was very disappointed in his team. I don't know if you're like a world beater all of a sudden now, or if you've but you are getting better. You blew up on somebody. You kind of, you know, in your last 2 games, you've only turned it over 1 time. I think that's some progress. I think you're figuring out, you know, I don't think Zach Kitley is necessarily a big proponent of being tempo all the time and all these things, but this is what this quarterback is good at and what he prefers, and so you've kind of majored in that. So you found something that that this quarterback feels good with and can execute and all those things, and so you've got a recipe now on what it's supposed to look like, and all the above. But the bye week certainly helped. I mean, that thing nestled in right in the middle of the season like that, man. Sign me up for more of those. Those are fun.
This is a question going towards recruiting. Will Joey McGuire land a 5-star recruit in the 24 recruiting class?
In the 24, I wouldn't bet against it. I mean, I think if you were asking right now, there's only depends on what service you look at. I mean, we work with rivals.com and RedRaidersports.com, and I think there's only, I don't know, a lot more often than not, any given year, 20 to 25 total. I mean, they try to keep that very.
Rivals is tighter on that than the others.
Well, those are supposed to be like bona fide, gonna be a first round draft pick. Like,
gotcha.
When you skip ahead, and so, but I wouldn't rule that out. You know, I don't know if I don't have anybody specific in mind, but I would not rule that out.
Okay.
But guess what? If you want to fatten up on a bunch of 4-star guys,
I think you're okay with that.
I'll take all that stuff.
I agree with that. When you're used to getting one maybe in a class a year, and you're landing quite a few nowadays, it's a different world for sure. Red Raider 806 asked this one, Level. Morton seems to have solidified himself as the starter for the rest of the season. Yay or nay? Or should Tyler get the job back now that he's 100%? I guess that's assuming he's 100%.
So you're asking if
he's asking if, in your opinion, does Morton take this? Is this his job to lose?
Oh, it's his. I mean, you'd be crazy to take him off the field right now. Like,
right.
Man, that's just the, what did Tony Romo say that one time? This is not a meritocracy. I think it was the phrase that he
used.
Yes. Yeah. No, I mean, Behren or Donovan, whoever was going to kind of ultimately decide this, I think Behren absolutely continue. Now, what happens when there's a little adversity or there's a little lull in the offense? Now you've got some buttons to push, and that's just going to be the reality of it too. So,
sure.
Not only do I think Behren should be able to continue to play and start these games, it's also going to be interesting if there's just one of these games where he just doesn't really have it. I mean, Clemson did this, this past weekend. They pulled their starting quarterback, who is their team leader and captain and all that stuff, because he just wasn't playing well. And, and I think I remember Mike Leach doing that years and years ago with Cliff Kingsbury and inserted BJ Simmons in.
Sure.
So, just to kind of, but, that's, it's going to be fascinating to watch the quarterback stuff play out in the last 5 games. Yes. And
best case scenario, you don't really have anything to worry about when it comes to who's behind him, that he just plays so well. You don't ever really worry about it. But the reality of it is the leash has to be shorter than a normal situation, right? I mean,
depending on what you're playing for and all that.
True,
and I don't know all those dynamics with, it's just going to be interesting because we've never been in this situation before.
But we have seen Joey McGuire, or heard him publicly talk about Tyler quite a bit in the return of Tyler Shuck for the Baylor game. So if you're a gambling man, do we see Tyler Shuck take a snap at quarterback, even if things are going well for Behren on Saturday against Baylor?
I would bet yes.
Yeah,
but I don't know what that's supposed to look like, and I also don't know where these guys are on some of these plays when they're maybe on the field at the same time. I don't know who's the one taking the snap. Like I don't know when they're maybe playing at the same time in some of these packages that they've worked on. I don't know who's actually under center, but I would say if you give me that option plus the traditional just taking the snap, I would say that he's probably. Yeah, odds are that he will see some action versus Baylor. Yeah.
All right, last question for you, Matt. This one says, Level, can you rank the top 3 skill position players for Texas Tech so far this season based off their performances?
Oh man, boy, that's tough.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I would say, because of yesterday in the West Virginia game, I'd probably say your 2 running backs and then Xavier White. would be my top three. I mean, Miles Price has been an incomplete. Trey Cleveland hasn't scored a touchdown yet. Yeah. Jerron Bradley's kind of been and Mason Tharp. They've had some bright moments, but I thought, the ability to get to the end zone for Roderick and Taj, and I'm excluding quarterbacks too, because don't forget that Donovan Smith leads you in touchdown passes. He's got some rushing touchdowns to go with it. I think so. But yeah, I would give you those three names, I guess, over anybody else. But that's a great question, because there's maybe there's not really a wrong answer. You could probably make some arguments for some other guys. But you know what? That's also like not necessarily, it's a good thing, but also kind of a bad thing too.
Right.
I'd love to have a set of triplets kind of thing, like where it's like, okay, this is my dude, that's my dude, and this is my dude. Look out, cover them, and you don't really have that.
Yeah. But you mentioned Tharp there. Tharp had a nice game against West Virginia. Probably one of the better ones we've seen. Tight end this year for sure.
It just flashes at times with these tight ends. There's some things there, and then you just don't. And we factor in really mainly the receiving part of it, and because I think they've done a good job blocking and and doing it right too, because you're kind of waiting to see what Baylor Cup can do as well.
Yep. All right, Level, man, it was fun on Saturday. Enjoyed it with you today. Hopefully we get to have another podcast like this next week.
There you go, man. Hey, sign me up. I'll do one every week if it's like this, man. Absolutely.
For sure. All right. Have a good one. We'll talk to you next week.
Keep hope alive, man.
For Chris Level, I'm Chois Woodman. You've been tuned into the Ask Level podcast, powered by Double T 97.3. You'll have a great rest of your week.
You've been listening to the Ask Level podcast, powered by Double T 97.3. For more from Lubbock Sports Station, go to doublet973.com.